be active for the presentation and also question the answers. Welcome, Mr. Henrik.
Thank you very much. You know, you probably see I have been asked to entertain you for the next 1 hour, at least 1 hour. I start actually with something I've discussed with a colleague of mine during lunchtime, you know, and it's a deep secret, you know. He started talking, I said, you know, the last week I was sitting from one workshop to the other, and then he said, I hate workshops. Yeah? So let's think beyond that, you know, let's think a little bit in a different direction. So, Medaway, good afternoon. I will introduce myself in a moment. After lunch, you know, people are a little bit sleepy, you know, blood sugars are down, etc. So we make that a little bit more interactive. You know, everybody stands up who considers himself to be part of the science community. Are there people which are part of the science community? Science community. Experts, whatever. You're, yeah. Thank you very much. This is something like 60% probably of the room. Yeah. Now the science community goes down, sits down. Yeah. Now everybody who thinks that he is a decision maker in Rwanda stands up. Decision maker. No, yeah, not in your own house, you know, basically in Rwanda. The question I have is, are you not a little bit frustrated? You produce very important scientific results, etc. How are you transforming these kind of scientific results into decision making? And that's probably the direction I would like to take you with me. How do you transport your knowledge, which you have accumulated and where you spent life years on, into realistic decision making? You know, let me also, my name is Henry Wiers, you know, just to pronounce it properly. I'm currently policy advisor at the Ministry of Environment. I am a geologist by background. So by background, I'm a natural scientist. I'm a scientist like 60, 70% of the room here. I'm also policy advisor, so I'm part of this, at least I can influence decision making in the Ministry of Environment, but I'm also actually a professor at the German Kazakh University, that's far away from here. In other words, I'm bridging science, policy, but I'm also with respect to decision making. And I guess this is the reason why I've been asked to entertain you for the next 1 hour. When we talk about climate change, we often refer also to the issue of sustainability. And when you think about the PowerPoint, or the poster which is sitting outside, it says, First Symposium on Climate Science, first. Yeah? So we have to think about it not as a kind of singular event, not as a kind of one-time event, but how are we turning this into a kind of more sustainable process, a kind of network, and I use by purpose the word network. And when I talk about a network, I don't mean a regular meeting dealing with climate and science. There are a lot of these formats also taking place in various aspects here in Rwanda. But we have to think about how we can institutionalize an interface between policy and science. How can we get these informed decisions actually by decision makers? Creating a climate science network cannot be done within a 60-minute session. You know, that's too short. But we can do this by picking up your brains. So I need all your brains. You know, lots of scientists, so we have a lot of brains around it. And we try to create a structure based on our ideas, on your ideas, which we would share with all of you during the next probably 2 weeks. So we look for ideas from your side during this next 1 hour, We are collecting them in the background, and then basically we produce a paper which we will share with you, and we will ask for your comments. During the next 60 minutes, setting the stage, I intend to share some of these ideas with you and invite you to contribute to this kind of process. I will ask rather simple questions, and invite you to react. We have some microphones, I think, also for the audience here in the room, and people will note down your intervention. So we will collect your ideas. By the end of the session, we should try to move from the idea of a symposium towards a network, and also collect your commitments in order to support this network. And you might become the founders of a network on climate science here in Rwanda. So, we play a little bit with hands and feet, etc. So, quick show of hands from your side. Who imagines still to collaborate with somebody in the year 2050? To collaborate with somebody else, not doing singular science just one by one, but with who you might think, are you going to collaborate with somebody still in the year 2050? Here we have a few points, Some people think about it. I exclude myself. I'm 68, so probably I'm dead at that time, So I'm a fossil at that time, yeah? So there are people which are thinking still to collaborate with people. When you hear the word network and you just shout out something, what do you associate with the word network? Any associations with networking? You have an idea. You just said something. Of what? Cocktails. Good, cocktails is a social aspects, Any associations with the word network? Shout through the room. Super, exactly, you get 3 points, for that. Any further words? Relationships. Great. Anything else? Linking ideas, super. Great, advancing, this is already going the right direction. With a network, you can influence decisions, influencing is very important, looking at opportunities, looking at synergies. From GIZ, when you think about networks, what's your first association? Pascal? Yeah, great, So we start thinking more in terms of networking. Last question on this round, who traveled further to this symposium? Who came from a long distance? Don't look at me. I arrived yesterday night. I traveled 8,900 kilometers. I came from Berlin. But I'm not on that. Why do you travel here? Why do you want to join that? Because it's an opportunity. Because if you are part of a network, you can influence things, and this is the important element. Yeah? Symposium, you just present yourself, and you get probably some feedback from other colleagues, etc. But with a network, you can influence decisions. This is what we want to go about. Next slide, please. Do you know what you're looking at? This is a snake which is biting at its own tail. And that's a symbol which is called Ouroboros, and it's basically the symbolization of eternal return. That it reminds us that every beginning already contains an end. And as a professor, I'm lecturing at this German-Kazakh University project design and resource mobilization. And one of the key messages I have to my students is when I begin the course is, one of the first activities you have to do when you design a new project is to develop a sustainability strategy. You have to start already when you begin a project to look at the end of the project, or you might call it also an exit strategy. And if we try to develop a kind of Rwanda Climate Science Network, we should aim at creating a resilient and sustainable future for a longer period, not just one symposium. So climate science networks in other parts of the world show that networks only endure when sustainability is based directly in front when they were created. So, example, Denmark. You know, Denmark's a small country in Europe. Denmark, the same in Germany, created in 1992 a kind of climate science network which is influencing policy decisions. But straight from the beginning, these networks had one key element. They were put into law with a legal requirement for the government to respond to their advice. So in principle, they meet every Monday. They provide advice on climate-related issues or global environmental changes, also biodiversity. But the government has to respond to this. This advice is given to the government. This advice is also given to parliamentarians. But it is also given to the private sector, and in particular, you know, or big insurance companies are very interested in getting this advice. So there is a kind of tradition of providing these kind of advice. In Germany, this has already started in 1992. So my suggestion or my message is, if a project cannot describe how its knowledge lives on, it is incomplete. Then it's just, sorry to say, a one-night stand. You know, it's just something which is there for once. Yeah? We have to start thinking beyond that, and this is what Rwanda also needs. And today we should start building that legacy into a future climate science network from minute one. When you think about your own projects, usually you have a project for 2 years, for 3 years, for 4 years, you know. When this project comes to an end, what would have saved it from coming to an end? Because you often think about 2, 3, 4 years, and then the budget is gone, and then you start writing a new project. But there might have been an element which would have allowed you to continue your project. Any suggestion? Great, social capital. Any other suggestions? Don't be shy. A revolving fund, for example. You know, you create an information, you charge for it, it comes into a kind of budget, and you can basically continue your project. Can be also a budget line in a ministry. Yeah? That there's a small budget line which allows you for a climate science network here in Rwanda. Have you ever heard the term elevator pitch? Somebody smiles. What is an elevator pitch? The gentleman which was Mr. Van Mossel, right? What is an elevator pitch? Exactly. You basically have a very short message which you prepare because you might meet somebody very, very influential. And you have a very short message. And we think later on a little bit about how we can create an elevator message for a climate science network here in Rwanda. To give you an example, you know, I have been dealing with resource mobilization even on a commercial basis, and then we had a meeting with a very influential, very wealthy, typical US billionaire, George Soros. And the key message we were working on, what are we going to do? You know, we just try to condense a very short message. This was against tuberculosis control in Africa. Stop TB, you know this program was one of the results of that. And we basically, I had a gentleman called Jim Kim next to me. Jim Kim was at that time professor at Harvard for epidemiology. He was a world expert on tuberculosis. And I try to explain to him, Jim, don't be complicated. When we talk with George Soros, just give him one message. And we came basically out. He said the message, Soros gave us a cash check. That's America. You know, at that time, they pulled out a checkbook and we got $1 million, you know, close to $1 million. And then we moved back to the elevator, and it was the other way around. Jim Kim, who later became director of the World Bank, jumped like a baby, you know, in the elevator. And I said, stop it, the elevator stops. So you have to start thinking not in complicated messages, but in a very small, short sentence which you can deliver. And we try to develop something like that also during the next 40 minutes or something like this for our climate science network here. Next slide, please. So, a resilient Rwanda needs a resilient knowledge backbone. I used by purpose the word backbone. You know, backbone here, something strong. Rwanda's Vision 2050, you know, they called for a climate resilient economic growth. The NST2, I don't have to explain that, you know, they demand innovation. The PST5 links climate research directly to farm productivity. But none of these planning papers, none of them, of these blueprints, yeah, will land without a steady pipeline of data and analysis on climate change. And this is basically what is needed. Not just one symposium, but a network which continuously delivers this kind of information and allows that these national strategies are continuously being fine-tuned. When you look at countries which have a strong knowledge backbone, you know, which is embedded even in law, they are able to deliver more consistent policy, but they are also able to attract much more investments. When you look at this future climate science network, don't consider this to be something like a project. Consider this to be something like infrastructure which Rwanda needs, like a road or, you know, a fiber optic network or cable, you know, infrastructure which connects ministries, which connects universities, the private sector, with real-time policy-ready evidence. And this is something which is urgently needed, and at the same time, all the components are here in Rwanda. There is a lot of these things already available, and so we have to look how to go about it. And probably, you know, every morning I read the kind of local newspaper which comes online, New Times. Yeah, you look at it, you know, 7 o'clock I read that because then I know what's in people's mind here. Think about a headline you would like to have in the New Times by the year 2050. Climate science related, a headline, a heading. Anybody know? You're a journalist, you know? You should have a headline, 2050, climate science related. For example, climate knowledge, the Climate Knowledge Hub has reduced flood losses by 50% or 40%. Something like a forward-looking message, you know, or Rwanda exports artificial intelligence, climate services all over Africa. Yeah? Think where you can deliver these kind of messages and how you can deliver that. Yeah, what else could we think about? Parliament passes policy drafted address on climate change based on climate science network evidence within 72 hours. That's probably not an elevator pitch, but think a little bit forward, you know, think what kind of messages you can have. Next slide, please. Now we start mapping a little bit, you know, the situation here in Rwanda. Who generates climate knowledge in Rwanda? We see something like a really impressive mosaic, you know, a really impressive mosaic. The government agencies, university researchers, NGOs, development partners, private institutions, etc. But still, it's something like a mosaic. There's a piece here, there's a piece there, there's something here, something here. Now it's back again. Thank you. What we don't see right now is a single independent forum which would classify Rwanda as a type 1A independent scientific climate council. You know, we need something like an independent science council. I think it's working. It's working again. Yeah? What we need is something like a neutral ethic where all the data, all the environment, climate and science data converge, where duplication is eliminated, where also policy risk cherry picking, you know, is also not taking place. Yeah? And this forthcoming network, which we are trying to draw up, would fill that gap and provide non-partisan science-first space, which brings together national expertise and would speak with one trusted voice. So instead of this variety of different voices, yet one voice. I had a discussion during this panel meeting where somebody pointed out to me that something very similar he is doing is actually happening somewhere else and somewhere else. And that's not necessary. If we develop this kind of climate science network, bringing things together, there would be one voice, one strong voice, which would produce the message of climate science strongly forward. Looking at all these scientists, you know, let's do another exercise. Yeah? Take your hand, raise it, and show me with your fingers how much openness you have with respect to data. How much of your data would you share with other people, which would make it easily accessible? I like the gentleman from Burkina Faso, 100%. I meant only 5, you know, 5. You would be open. You would share all your data. Wow, Rema shares all the data. Yeah. So I think this is a good start. You know, people are ready to share their data. Probably some of you have heard about Margaret Mead. She's a world famous anthropologist at Yale University. She passed away in the meantime, and she never made career. She has published books, you know, by the millions. She never made a career, and people ask her, I said, why don't you become a real professor, professor in tenure, etc. And she said, don't worry, you know, I leave my ideas lying around like other people leave their pens around. Yeah? And that's a good, she was very open with respect to her data openness. And that should be one of the key elements for a kind of climate science network here in Rwanda. What kind of barriers would you see for data openness here in Rwanda? Why might people not share data? This is very common, you know, a lot of people don't share data very often. This has to do with patent rights, you know, or people are scared that their data is being used for other publications, etc. Why would you think people would not be ready to share data? Please. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, indeed, there are barriers. There are barriers, even if a lot of people said we provide all the data free of charge and we're totally open with all our data. In reality, there's also something like a nervousness, what happens with my data. Burkina Faso. I don't know your name, sorry.
My name is Bamba, and I'm from Senegal.
Oh, okay,
Now
sorry.
I'm Rwandan, so. Yeah, there are many things why people, they don't want to share their data. First of all, it's like they don't trust their data. So as simple as it is, and then when you give your climate data to a climate scientist, I will go inside, scrutinize it, and then tell you like your data is not good, for example. Okay, so that's one. The second thing is like I've been talking a lot with Med Services, and what they told me is like, okay, so if we give you our data, that's the only thing we have to monetize to be able to maintain our automatic weather stations. So if we give it to you for free, so what do we have? And that's actually true, right? So you also have national security, and this is very important, the national security one. I remember sometimes I was in Burkina Faso, because I
got it.
in Burkina Faso for 6.5 years at Wascal, and then I was a head of department, so in climate science, so I had to talk to Met Services. And I asked for data because we had to do a study over all West Africa, so we need Met Services data. So ask for a particular area in Cote d'Ivoire, for example, the cacao area, the climate data, temperature, precipitation, and so on. So the guy told me there is no way we will give you historical data for that area. And I was like, why? And they said national security. So I didn't understand. So, but that is true, because if I got that data, I can tell how economy of Cote d'Ivoire have been doing, and I can even do some projections and all of that. And it become a national security issue. And it's true, all the data will be exposed. And another simple thing is, if they give me the data for free as a student, and another student go and get data from another area, and another student go and get data from another area, among students, we can sit together, share the data among ourselves, and have the whole database for that country. And that's not what Med Services want, yeah. So those are just few reasons.
Thank you very much. When you talked, it reminded me of a similar situation. I was working in Uzbekistan, and I needed data about water which is transported from a neighboring country. And this was considered for national security. I think the battery is getting slower, lower. So the data was not made available to me. And then you had to think about innovative ways of getting this data. So I suggested that they introduce a photocopying fee. With photocopying fee that worked. Yeah? So you paid for this data. But in principle, sometimes data is not publicly available. Now, next slide, please. How connected are we? Huh? Again, we just use your fingers. 5 fingers means you're well connected. You're really well connected. You know all your colleagues, in the field in Rwanda or probably internationally. 3 fingers means sometimes I'm connected, and 1 finger means, I don't have too much of an opportunity. Yeah? So how well connected are you here in Rwanda? You don't have any connections. Okay, GIZ is very voluntarily, indicating 3. That's probably a realistic figure. That's probably what I consider. I work since 2 years in Rwanda. This is something which is realistic. Any other suggestions? 2.5? 3. 3? Yeah, okay. 3, I think we come to this point, You're moderately connected, That means there is still plenty of room to grow. And keep that baseline in mind, because we will repeat that exercise next year when we have created this kind of climate science network. And at that time, we expect to see a forest of fingers, of 5 fingers. We try to improve your your connections or connectivity. Next slide, please. The next question is, do we actually need a real climate science network in Rwanda? Why do we need that? I think the key element is that the evidence, if we have an independent scientific council, this would increase the transparency and accountability and give the Rwandese government a much more structured way to respond to messages from the science community. So it's a way science talking to the government talking to science, but we should also keep in mind that there are people in the private sector which might also be interested in that. Yeah? The functions of such a network could be threefold, and this is important to remember. They can act as a watchdog. They can basically provide also criticism or polite criticism back to the government and say, look, if you don't do this and this, the implication would be the following. Positively, it can act as an advisor. It can just suggest do this, and the effects would be positive for Rwanda. But it can also act as a convener, bringing people together which would otherwise probably not meet. Yeah? And these three roles, watchdog, advisor, and convener, these three roles right now, not a single Rwandese government or single Rwandese institution combines. So the question I have to you is, are there actually, the need for a unified science voice? We had the situation with these floods in beginning of 2024 in Rwanda. At that time, it would have been great if there would have been one voice. And there were a lot of messages, very good messages, very well-founded messages, but providing one message would have probably been a great element. Next slide, please. What would you use this network for? You see, I talked earlier about a kind of mosaic. You see this kind of mosaic which is there. Functions could be a data portal. You would provide rapid response briefs if something happens. You would provide trainings through these networks, and you might even think about placements. Any further ideas for which such a network could be used for? If you are part of this network, how would you use such a network? It's not a symposium, it's a network. Pascal?
Access to data. Thank you. There's support also for publication, not necessarily financial report, but capacity development, etc. And there could be a higher output of publications on climate issues here in Rwanda, which would then also be taken into account in the IPCC reporting and having this impact at a, let's say, a global or also regional level.
Thank you. Any further? Senegal. I got it. Please.
Yeah, just just one usefulness about this networking, because let's say we have to get to know each other, because I've been here for 5 years in Rwanda, and I didn't know that UNILAC was doing climate science. So that's I think this is the discovery for me, and I'm happy about that. I'm happy to know about that. Yeah, and thanks to the network.
Thank you. You know, this is also an example. You know, this could have happened by coincidence that you meet somebody who provides this kind of information. But if this data would be provided much more in a structured way, rather than through this kind of mosaic of different actors, this would be much easier to get this information. You know, I'm working for the European Union as part of the policy advice to the Ministry of Environment. And I have a similar problem. You know, after 2 years, I still try to figure out what development partners doing what, which we also intend to do. And very often, I still find after 2 years duplications. Yeah? So, and probably the same applies to people which make decisions in the ministries or institutions in Rwanda. They also are not aware about that. That would be much easier if we would have a structured network which provide this kind of information to all of us, rather than us finding out individually by coincidence, by talking with somebody, by having a coffee, etc. Tangible services of such a network, you know, could be also a 48-hour brief, policy brief, when the cabinet needs a kind of numbers fast, quick access to data, not writing a memorandum and getting feedback and asking the individual institutions in Rwanda, but something like a quick response system. That is what is happening in other countries of the world. We have these European climate policy networks which bundle exactly these kind of 3 services. They provide real-time monitoring, so they have this watchdog function. You know, they know what is happening. They look forward, they provide forward-looking advice, so they are advisors, and they create stakeholder dialogues, so they have this convener role, watchdog, advisor, convener. And in principle, we would like to see in Rwanda, or I would like to see in Rwanda, something very similar, a kind of climate science network which acts as a watchdog, which acts as an advisor, and which also convenes people, bringing people together. So the situation which our colleague from Senegal explained, to find out after years that somebody else is doing something which you intend to do or you plan to do, this information would be much easier available. Now, next slide, please. Who should sit at the table? You know, who should be part of this network? I think we have 5 important elements. You know, one is science communities, universities, scientists, etc. Government institutions are part of it. We have the ministries of environment, but we have also MINECOFIN, the financial ministry of Rwanda, which has now also a special session on natural finance capital. We have parliament, we have the banks, the insurance companies, and we have civil society. So all of them should ideally be part of a climate science network. So basically, this kind of network would have 5 seats. Any other suggestion who should be part of that? Here we have a suggestion, I like that. Yeah? Please.
Thank you so much. I raised my hand for the previous slide where you were asking about how to position this network.
Can we go back with the slide?
Yes, yeah. I wanted to say that really here in this room we are having young scientists. I think that this climate network could serve as a platform where young people could define a subject to work on, subjects or topics relevant to the policy issues. Instead of going to Google to find for an issue, I mean, if a policymaker is facing an issue of mosquito population, perhaps if there's a young MSc at EMS who can work on it. So that network, if we can serve that platform for people to work on issues relevant to policymakers, I think that would be really a value proposition to the government to support this network. Of course, serving as a policy shop. So going to the slide you were on a stakeholder I see missing there, perhaps it's a part of civil society. The slide you were on.
Next slide, please.
Yes, I was to suggest the faith-based community. faith-based organization.
Excellent.
They do have, they are now organized. They have what the Rwanda Interfaith Community. They have an organization, like an umbrella of faith communities, where really if they can be able to, not to understand the GHG and the inventory, but understand the message. Because if the pastor or a priest says, let's safeguard this tree, this indigenous tree, people will listen to them. Yeah. So let's do erosion control. People do listen to them. So if you are talking science among ourselves, not involving those people, we really miss something. I mean, a critical stakeholder. So that was my input. I think that the list is exhaustive, but if you can add the faith-based community, I mean, that would be really something helpful. Thank you.
So you answered already my questions. Do you see any gaps? And basically, I think I fully agree with the idea of these kind of faith-based communities. I've been working in the past for a long time with UNEP, United Nations Environment Programme, and we had a special program on exactly this issue. You know, at a certain time, we got even the Pope coming to UNEP in Nairobi. Yeah? So gives you an idea, perfect. Yeah? How about, this is faith-based community. At the same time, you have also minorities very often in countries. So minorities should have also an access, a way of accessing. You add another element which you had mentioned earlier, where young people, yeah? Even if we think about a network like that, which probably have a kind of column which says, we have 2 vacancies on this and that, or we are looking for a young intern on that and that, to consider this also as a kind of networking effect, you know, as part of this kind of science, climate science network. Any other suggestion? Whom are we missing here? No? Then we do the next slide. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Sorry? What do you mean by science there? Science, we mean...
Just clarification.
Science, we mean anybody who is really involved in doing science, you know, whether he's working at the university, whether he's working in a private lab, whether he's working, you know, also in the government institutions, you can do science. Yeah? So anybody who is dealing with science in the widest sense. Yeah? Universities, for example. Do you feel to be part of science yourself?
Yeah, because someone from government also can doing science. That's the confusion I had actually. Yeah. Because having the government, parliament, industry, civil society, yeah, we better understand about.
Also a parliamentarian can be a scientist. Yeah, but you know, it's a way how you associate yourself with it. Okay. We don't have them in separate boxes. Yeah? Oh. Yeah? Thank you.
Yeah. So I want. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, sure. Sorry. There's a microphone. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I wanted to. So I'm Serafino Senga. Yeah. I work for Academia 2063.
Yeah.
So for there, as stakeholders, I don't expect, to me, to have an MP seated in the room where we're talking about modeling or I mean, climate modeling in mathematics. Yeah. So rather, I think that we should design an outreach strategy to the government and MPs, but have the platform reserved for certain category. Otherwise, we won't expect really to have the MP seated in the room. We are discussing weather information, data information. Rather, we should be able to package that information to them. So that's why we have to be careful. Otherwise, you can just add them on the list of stakeholders, but knowing that we won't have them on the table. So it's a matter of being strategic on how we design an outreach strategy to make sure that what we are discussing as science is really understandable, made digestible to them. Thank you.
I fully agree with your suggestion. We need different outreach strategies if we're going to do this. You came up, I think, with the suggestion of the faith-based groups. Again, there's a different way of communicating these kind of messages to them compared if you talk with some parliamentarians or if you talk with, let's say, a private sector company on the insurance basis, where you probably argue much more commercially, you know, with economic figures. We had one more question. Do we have a microphone for our gentleman here on the...
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to add the other gaps, the other gap among the stakeholders that have to be considered, and sometimes we keep omitting them or leaving them behind. But if they are not involved, nothing can be happening. Those are the representative of the communities. So the communities need to be represented for their voice to be heard before the decision is made. We need to understand, to hear the voice of the community. Additional to the community is the private sector, which is a key player. I saw in the list there's no private sector. Industry can be part of, but private sector is wide, and the most of the producers and the production trends impact much the ecosystem, and it can disturb the environment. So they are key partners that have to be looked for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we will take all your comments into account. We will fine-tune that. You know, this was done on a short notice. We have one more question.
Thank you. Maybe it's not an actor that is missing, but it's a way as scientists or government agents, we miss this community that my friend was talking about. Our researches are formulated into technical words, into scientific ways, and are not translated into the language that it's really convincing the non-scientist to get the message and to take a decision or to act. I was discussing yesterday with my elder brother, Prof. Elias, saying that when we conduct a research making an abstract, we would at least trying to put this abstract into other languages that could even attract non-scientists or non-climate scientists, and saying there is really an issue that I have to act on. We gave an example for Meteo. What is making Meteo Rwanda effective? It's not the publication of papers. It's the message that they sent early morning. Today it will rain at 12. The temperature will be like this in Kigali, and the weather, the cold weather will be like this in Gicumbi and other way. It's that simple language of translating scientific evidences into really simple language, but calling people to act. We miss the population to whom we are really serving, because we use the language that they don't capture easily.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very important point. Our gentleman on the left side already talked about different communication strategies, you know, talking in a different language to different audiences. This is something which is sometimes extremely difficult. Yeah? I've been myself actually spokesman of the German Ministry of Environment. It was extremely difficult sometimes to get the right twist for a simple message. It's sometimes much easier to write a super extensive scientific text because it's your language. This is what you have learned to do. But to turn this into something like half a page which has an impact is very difficult. Therefore, your point is well taken. I said already earlier, we take actually comments. Here's another question, sorry. You know, I think we start a dialogue, it's getting better. Yeah, please. Hey, no, sorry, that gentleman. Yeah, exactly.
We should be, thank you, should be mindful to ensure that, so we're talking science, kind of a blank. If we are not careful, we might find ourselves only having atmospheric physics scientists only. So we should be careful to make sure that really, yes, we have scientists, hard science, but also social scientists in the room, political scientists, and social science, economists in that mix. Otherwise, if you say science only, we might really be kind of biased to only have physics and modeling scientists, forgetting that impact climate change is also kind of cross-cutting, needing people working on gender, women issues, youth issues, also on the board. That will make really that the output of our messaging is really kind of reaching the audience we need to attack. So I was insisting that we broaden the members, I mean, on the science panel, yeah. What profile are we looking for? I mean, broaden the profiles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think these are very valid points, you know. If we, can we go one slide further? I think it's important, really, we have to move actually from ideas to structure. You know, right now we are collecting ideas, but when we start preparing a kind of background paper, which we're going to share with you, we have to move from these ideas to more structure with respect to government and how are we going to institutionalize the whole issue. And I think it's important to look actually at successful climate science networks in Europe, because all of them have one thing in common, you know. Their impact, and a lot of them have actually impact, is nothing else than a result of the mandate which they get, having a strong mandate, capacity to handle this mandate, but also visibility. We talked about outreach and communication strategy. So if any of these factors is zero or is pretty negative, the product is also impacted by that. So capacity begins also with a well-established secretariat for such a climate science network. Visibility is also requires the government actually to respond publicly to issues which this kind of climate science network comes up. So if they come up with a suggestion, in principle, government should respond to that. And the mandate comes from the terms of reference, which is ideally also part of legislation. We are talking already far away, but I think this is important to understand. Impact is nothing else than mandate, capacity, visibility, and these 3 points are quite important. Good. Now we'll have a nice picture. Next slide, please. You know, who knows this lady? All Germans, you know, have to, Pascal knows. When I say, who knows the lady, he immediately raised his arm. Pascal, who is that? Yeah, what is she?
She used to be the head of this advisory board.
Yeah, exactly. She has been actually the head of the Climate Science Network in Germany, which was created already in 1992. She was not the first head, and she's not head anymore, but it shows you that actually institutions are human. You know, they are very nice, very intelligent, very friendly people, which are actually part of this kind of institution. And she has been heading that for quite a long time. As I said earlier, you know, this kind of Climate Science Council, Wissenschaftlicher Beirat für globale Umweltfragen, was founded already in 1992. And since 1992, it has been meeting literally every Monday. Yeah? And this is also something like a proof of institutional stamina. It still exists. Yeah? But we have also other positive examples. You know, the Kenya Climate Network started pretty much at the grassroots level. This was something like an initiative of few people, and now it has gone really national, has received a national reach. It's being acknowledged as a kind of institution which is being asked. They provide newsletters, they come back with recommendations, etc. And also another part of Africa and South Africa, they have the South African Climate Service. This is not the Meteo, it's not South African Meteo, this is South African Climate Service. But what they also do is they provide data free of charge. You know, it's open data, it's public data. So none of these models we can copy and paste. You know, we cannot use the German, South African, Kenya one and delete the word Germany and insert Rwanda and we have a draft. But each of these offers or gives clues, you know, in which direction such a system in Rwanda might look like. It should be independent, it should be owned by the community which operates it, scientists, government, etc., and it should provide public good data. Everybody should have access to the data. Can I ask you, when you look at Rwanda, what kind of difficulties would you see in creating such a kind of network in Rwanda? What are the key difficulties you would encounter, you would think you might encounter? You're working in Rwanda. Do you think it's feasible to create a kind of climate science network in Rwanda? Yes. It is, huh? It might be an interesting effort. Yeah? Any further feedback from our Rwandese colleagues? Okay, we should go full stamina ahead with this, you know? Okay, sorry.
Thank you so much again. For me, I was rather seeing opportunities, and for really this climate network, yeah. Because we do have a coordination mechanism already in place, like the agriculture sector working group. That is really a wide range, a wide platform of stakeholders in the sector. So looking for evidence, of course, is that information. So if really this network is operational and could provide that value proposition, I see it as an opportunity. Same for the environment. We do have the thematic group. We do have the CNL working group. So those are functioning. And I think that really if we could strategically position ourselves as a policy shop to them, to the existing coordination mechanism, I think that would be really justify our existence and value proposition. So for me, I see opportunities rather than challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, we never met before, but you're talking to my heart. You know, I had exactly similar ideas. Any further suggestions here from our Rwandese colleagues? Okay, now that we have actually agreed on some of these basic elements, you know, on the governance, who should be part of it, how are we communicating, etc., we go to the next slide. We go on a, it slipped a little bit, okay. But we go on a 90-day sprint, you know, quick wins and responsibilities. What can be done really on a short notice, you know, draft terms of reference of such a network, you know. Somebody's smiling, you know, because of the high heels of the lady in front of it. But I think it's an American expression, I think, 90-day sprint, you know. But during these 90 days, we could draft terms of reference, we could share them with you, we could ask for your feedback and comments. What we also could start to do is something like, a two-pager, probably every 2 weeks, you know, climate evidence, a policy note. I am doing that as policy advisor in the Rwandese ministry quite regularly. You know, I provide inputs to the permanent secretary, to the minister, etc. What is happening in international climate policy? What's happening? What will be the big issues at COPs? What's happening at this Petersburg dialogue? What is happening on the issue of biodiversity? What expectations do people have with respect to Industry 3.0? So I start doing this on an individual basis regular, but to institutionalize that would be a great opportunity. We also might think about having an MOU with a foreign mentor network, a memorandum of understanding, probably with this German or Danish institution, trying to learn from them. You know, what are the issues, which are probably the mistakes we might make, but what are the issues which we can learn from them? And we might also think about, you know, having sometimes communication training series, you know, with our colleague who talked about communication strategy, and also here our colleague. This is an art, you know, how are you transforming scientific information into messages to different communities, you know, faith-based communities, local communities, etc. How are you translating that? And you have to learn that. This is something like a training possibility. So this would be something like my suggestion for this kind of 90-day sprint, you know. Any other suggestions which we can do on a short notice in order to further this idea of climate science network? Anything? Here we have, you know.
Thank you once again. Intervention from my side. Looking to my left, I see Eric from REMA, and I think once again we can talk about the use of the climate change portal, which is hosted by REMA, also to diffuse information. And I was actually also very surprised yesterday when Bamba said that just yesterday, so it was 2 days before, the regional outlook from IPCC came out. Yeah. And I'm also wondering how many people in the room are aware of this, I would say, important document, high scientific standards that are based, which are the basis for this document. And I think still, I guess 90–95% of the participants in this room are not aware of the publishing of this document. Maybe at Ames it has been communicated, but even if he knows, I mean, he knew it, he doesn't have any communication channel to reach out beyond, let's say, Ames. And I think this can be a quick win to change this, either by the portal or by any other, maybe simple means.
Pascal, that's a very important element. You know, we see a lot of reports from the World Meteorological Organization, IPCC, different organizations, but also looking at the issue of climate finance. You know, a lot of activities are happening, and to feed this kind of information into the Rwanda science community would be a great opportunity if we have such a network and a kind of communication channel. I do these, you know, being policy advisor, this is what I usually do. You know, I look at these upcoming reports, make something like a one-page summary, you know, and push them into the policy level at the Ministry of Environment. But through such a science network, we could do this much broader, but we could also get information from them. You know, sometimes they find something which we are unaware about. So this would be another opportunity. You have a point, the gentleman in the back.
Thank you. We have done a mapping about national, regional, and global networks on climate adaptation, research, science, but also some of them add other aspects of knowledge mobilization, knowledge transfer, and action, some a bit more science policy. So that mapping exists. We've done that with the UNEP adaptation team in Nairobi. So there is best practice out there, or there is at least lots of material to learn from. So there would be, in addition to the list of 3 that you have given, because there is, we've mapped 230 of those. Some are indeed not called networks, but they have all the features and characteristics of networks. Some are called alliances, others are called partnerships. Very interesting models also in terms of the institutionalization, the governance, the membership, the incentive and reward mechanisms behind it, and the second suggestion would be social science has given us a great tool to understand, to have a bit of a baseline understanding on where we're starting from. I think 30 minutes ago we talked about connectivity is an incredibly important part and relationship building. And how about running something like a social network analysis? So we have a bit of a baseline on depth, frequency of relations within the actor landscape. I think this symposium was a great group, so we know who is in the boat. And social network analysis is a great tool to understand the nature, the frequency, and the depth of connectivity in potentially like we can start with these institutions and groups that are here. Just a suggestion.
Thank you very much. Just responding very quickly to this, you're already part of this. You will be part of the 90-day sprint. You know, even we never met before, but automatically you become a member of that. Any other suggestions? Here, our gentleman.
Proud member of the network too, but I'd suggest that we do what we did in the first place, in the beginning of this network, of getting policymakers on board. Again, plan really again to get more buy-in by beyond MOE, getting other ministries on board, and that will require beyond this, but really sitting with the key stakeholders. To engage them so that Minagri, RWAB, and Rwanda Space Agency are having buy-in or not trying to do. So that should be part of this 90-day sprint. High-level, I'm calling high-level engagement. Technicians are aware, they are our partners, but we need the bosses to have really for the buy-in of this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's an excellent point. You know, there are these environmental management systems existing, you know, both in Ministry of Environment, which probably has to be extended, but also in Minagri. But then we have also the other issue when we talk only about the environmental sector. We have Ministry of Environment, we have the Green Fund, we have REMA, we have the MinEcofin now, which has created this kind of new department which focuses on climate finance in the widest sense. Yeah? And I think it's one of the elements is also to streamline this process of information exchange rather than actually having you know, different groups working sometimes parallel, but sometimes probably not knowing what the other one is doing. So I think one thing is streamlining internally inside the government, but at the same time, as most of you are scientists, we have also to look at all these kind of partners which are outside and provide information from the science level into the government sphere. So I think all points are taken. As I said earlier, you know, somebody is writing documents. Now, next slide, please. This is, probably have heard about a pledge wall. So now you look at this picture and you wonder what this is. This is graffiti which has been sprayed in front of my house in Berlin. So somebody has sprayed that on a wall, which looks quite nice. But in principle, the pledge wall is already existing. When you came and participated and you filled out the forms in the background, it basically asks you, how can you contribute? So what we will do is, we have your names, we have your email addresses, and we might come back to you with a question. Can you be probably a little bit more specific how you can contribute with the things you have written on these kind of pages? So in principle, we have a pledge wall. Now, if somebody wants to stand up and he says he's pledging $100,000 or €100,000 for it, you're most welcome. This is unlikely to happen. I can see all the development partners going like this, you know, I'm not here, yeah? But still, you know, even I have some resources. I'm working in the Ministry of Environment as part of the EU project, so I might have also some resources, but I'm not going to share that with you right now. Next slide, please. Now, So this is wrap up, and thank you. You know, I think we're coming close to an end slowly. Yeah. So the key points are, and this kind of climate and science network is something like a national infrastructure. It's not just something whimsy. It's something like really a road, you know, or a pipeline or something like that. We should probably think about, even thinking about a parliamentarian, I call that climate science caucus, a group of parliamentarians which are really focused on climate science, which have probably some education also in the background, which could act as a kind of node for us at the policy level. And we might also think about this kind of interministerial steering groups. This interministerial steering group goes in the same direction like our gentleman says, you know, bringing different Ministry of Environment, Agri, Min Health also, Min Ökofin, the ICT department, the Ministry for Natural Disaster Management. I've forgotten the abbreviation for that. So bringing them all as part of it. Last thing is, next slide. You need something like a one sentence, as I said, for your pitch in elevators, you know, and the suggestion is a resilient Rwanda needs a resilient knowledge backbones. So what we want to do is going from ideas, which we are collecting now, to go more on the pledge wall, to commitments, and then probably during this 90-day sprint to actions, you know. Final question, you know, who will invite next, you know? We could think about Rwanda Development Board, East African Press, local, whatever. So this was in a nutshell. This is what I wanted to do with you, to develop this idea about climate science network, to get your buy-in. This is a little bit like selling washing machines, as nobody has opposed it. We take that as a commitment, you know, from you, that we are going to continue working on this. We take the comments which you prepared for us into account, and we will come up with a paper back to you probably in 2 weeks' time, and then we see how it continues. Thank you very much from my side. Now I've talked for 1 hour.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the good interaction. I think all of the here present, you are participating in this session, and it was very interesting. And I like how you are tackling on networking, the importance of it. How are you going to do with these 90 days? What are you going to do? It's as if the symposium leave the network starting. This is day one. Day one, network. What are we going to do? It is our task so that we can have this network in place, operational, reaching at the objective of it. This is a great moment. We are reaching the closing of this session, because I don't know if we have another session of questions, because the presentation was a very interactive one. Do we wish to? Yeah. He wanted to thank. There is, anyone who have any burning question or comment? Yes. My friend. Yeah.
About there's something that Professor Beth raised in the morning about capacity building, strengthening the capacity for purpose of sustainability. So I see, to me, that this network will make sense to policymakers if we really propose that the capacity building, because here, look, in this network, we have scientists in every domain, experts. So if really we can be able to build the capacity of locals for the purpose of sustainability, that would be a good point to say, beyond just say policy briefs and convening ROR, but really making capacity building of Rwandans on climate science, negotiation others, would be a value proposition that will be really get a good buy-in. So that was my burning point. Thank you so much. Capacity building for sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And my message was for all, at different level, capacity buildings for different level, because we had the discussion earlier, people which are sitting are decision makers in a village or etc. You need a different language. Yeah? So thank you very much. I give it back, but maybe we would like to thank our host, GIZ. That's your turn.
Thank you very much. We are reaching the end of the session, but I would like to attend this important session. We are going to welcome the division manager in the Nirema, Eric Mudachikwa, who is going to close our important meeting for today. And after closing, because I not take another round of word, we will have the coffee break. It is the cocktail, outside the room. Thank you very much. You are welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Alice. Thank you, everyone. I was not supposed to close, but I will close on behalf of the PS. Has been in a different session, so as a technical organizer, as a panelist, and now I just get another hat on behalf of the permanent secretary who was supposed to be here, but she was being delegated to another task. So, honorable scientists, researchers, it's really a pleasure to be with you today. Students, ladies and gentlemen, friends, researchers who are joining online today. As we are draw this Inspired Climate Science Symposium to a close, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each of you for your active participation and invaluable contribution over these 2 days. This theme of advancing research and networking has truly resonated throughout our discussion, highlighted by the critical importance of collaborative efforts in addressing the climate change issues. With this, the last presentation, we have seen how we can build and how important is the network among us and beyond us. The network is not really with us. Science doesn't have a border. We have different people from different corners. So we think the networking has started earlier before by preparing this symposium, since there was different people from different institutions coming together just to show up the outcome of today. As you see, this banner, the different institution name, all of these people gathered together to have, first of all, it was a network session, just to have a single idea where we needed to be and how do we need to do this. So we have seen the power of knowledge sharing as highlighted by different presenters, innovative research, and the strengthened partnership in shaping effective solutions for environment and communities. Rwanda remains committed to fostering a vibrant scientific community that drives sustainable development and resilience in the face of climate adversities. I urge each and every one of you to carry forward the insight gained here, deepen our collaboration, and continue to translate research
into impactful actions. Together, we can build a resilient future for Rwanda, the region, grounded in science and united in purpose. So having this, as we have been seeing during all the presentation from yesterday in different breakout session, most of these are science, but if you don't transform this science into action, into tangible activity, it will not serve for a better Rwanda. Saying so, on behalf of the Ministry of Environment and on behalf of the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Environment, we thank you once again for your dedication, engagement, and we really look forward to continue the partnership in advancing climate science for the betterment of all and for the country. Thank you very much.
As announcement, the cocktail is outside. There is someone who is going to guide us. Yeah. And it is an opportunity, another opportunity